The Chimera came back down the mountain at breakneck speed, screeching around corners and fishtailing dangerously close to the edge. Guy's hand was on the gear stick, his thumbnail ready to pop off the cover for the missile button, and Sharon watched it quietly. To her, he seemed too calm. His eyes were thin, hard slices of white, and the muscles of his jaw bunched rhythmically to Duke Ellington's Sugar Rum Cherry, a song incongruously slow considering the world flying by outside her window, and her stomach lurching every time he cut the wheel a split second before impact. She kept expecting them to launch off of a mountain and out into the empty air, windshield filled with nothing but clear blue sky, and she couldn't seem to feel fear. Couldn't feel anything at all, really. Maybe Guy was the same, she thought, dead inside, at least for now, holding off the feeling of any emotion because it might be a dam bursting. Or maybe he really was the cold, heartless monster she sometimes felt he was, the reptile who didn't really have to yawn but would fake it to see if she did. She watched his eyes, hoping to see something other than iron determination, something like grief, the abysmal despair she was trying not to feel. But she didn't. His mind was unerringly focused on what to do next. If he had any downtime later, like on a plane flight or in a jail cell, he could allot maybe 15 minutes for a mental breakdown. But until that happened, he had to find his old friend. There were only so many places McGuire could be. It made sense that he would be checking out of a hotel or already on his way back to Vienna. If it was the former, it would be one of the cheaper hotels, and if the latter, there was only one road out of the village. The Chimera would catch up with him. The car swerved and skidded to a stop in the same parking space as before, and Guy pulled a subcompact semi-automatic, a CZ-2075 Rami, seemingly out of nowhere. He slipped it into the pocket of his pepper blue topcoat, glanced at his wife, and showed the first sign of emotion: impatience. He merely raised his eyebrows interrogatively, and she hesitated, then nodded, and got out of the car. Hugging herself against the cold, she followed him briskly back into the village. This time, when Guy put on his COVID mask, it was less of an act by a compliant man giving in to peer pressure, and more like a ninja disguising himself before battle. In his stride, there was a predatory confidence, like a lion strolling through a village of huts where people cowered behind doors made of grass. Their footsteps crunched on snow-covered cobblestones all the way to the first hotel, where two men emerged to greet them. They had deep tans that came from a desert sun, and the posture of military men out of uniform. They fanned out to come at Guy from both sides at once, and his heart leapt at the chance to release his pent-up anger. He swerved and ran the last two steps, rapidly closing the gap and springing. His right knee pissioned up in mid-air, and his left leg lashed out, kicking the man in his bearded chin. He pivoted when he landed, prepared for the slipperiness of the terrain. He wobbled a little, and the second attacker tried to make his play, but Guy had seen it coming. Sharon stared at the dazzling flurry of palm heel strikes, of parries and ripostes, attempted spin kicks and elbow jabs. For all she knew, her husband had attacked two tourists for no reason at all, and it was a coincidence that all three were kung fu enthusiasts. Flecks of snow flew up from their tornado of blows, blurring their movements even more. All she heard was the rustle of clothing, the dull smacking of bones on flesh. For the first time in years, she saw her husband really fight. And two men at that. It reminded her of what she had seen in him those early years, the fierce pride she'd felt knowing he was a real man. But more than that, in those days, he'd bordered on demigod. But the two men were also trained killers, and had the advantage of having been ready for a fight. They'd known it was coming, and when, and so had done their stretches and warm-up routines. What they were not ready for, however, was a man whose castle had just been destroyed. A pole in front of his shop snapped like a twig, and pieces of it flew, spinning to clatter against the plate glass windows, and the awning that it upheld came crashing down. It was then that Sarah noticed the people watching, their noses pressed to those windows, their breath fogging the glass. She felt alarmed suddenly, remembering the danger she was in, the fact that she was now homeless and the target of someone with an unimaginable power. Maybe the vengeful victim of any one of Guy's capers, the former owner of something he'd rather see flattened than be without. She finally snapped out of her daze. One of the bearded men staggered, drops of blood spotting the snow beneath him, and two loud cracks shattered the morning. Sharon flinched, ducking down with her hands going up, and Guy stared in surprise as both men fell to the cobbles. There was a collective gasp from all the spectators, but no one had time to wonder what had happened. McGuire ran out of the hotel door with a gun in his hand and an overnight bag. "Let's go, he shouted. "There's more of them." Without wasting time, Guy turned and grabbed Sharon by the hand, pulling her along the way they'd come. Calvin kept pace beside them, noticing something above and gasping, "Look out!" Another crack rang out, and the wooden leg of an outdoor table shattered into splinters as they passed. The table keeled over, spilling someone's cup of espresso and plate of croissants into the street. An instant later, tables of fruit merchants collapsed, spilling oranges into the snow. Guy couldn't tell where the gunshots were coming from. When he saw McGuire file blindly behind him as they ran, he let go of Sharon's hand to pull his own pistol, but the other man said, "No, don't! We'll be fine! This way!" They ducked down a side street and took the long way back to the car, zigzagging around shops and houses. They wasted no time with questions because the cold air was sharp in their throats. Far behind them, the two dead men stood up and dusted the snow off their clothes. One of them gestured at the face of the other, and the second touched his mouth. Looking at the blood on his fingertips, he nodded. "He got a good one in. We totally had him, though." "Oh yeah, totally." Hammond came out of the shop with the collapsed awning, pushing the cloth aside, and clapped his hands twice. "Okay, that's a wrap. Let's get this show on the road."